Hi, John Chapin with your latest sales tip. And today I'm going to talk about how to get past the objection, I can get it cheaper somewhere else. So as you know, this is basically a price objection. So let's get right into it. So you've done your presentation, you get to the end and the prospect says to you, yeah, looks good, but I can get it cheaper somewhere else. Answering this question is actually fairly simple. You're going to start with some real basic, straightforward questions. So the first thing you're going to say once they say they can get it somewhere cheaper is you're going to say, oh, okay, how much cheaper? Whatever number they give you. So if I'm willing to sell it to you for that, you'd buy? If they say yes, you have a choice. Either sell it to them at that price, or if you can or don't want to, now you have to do a little more work, ask some more questions. Now, sometimes you're not that far apart. So if you're at 20,000, the prospect comes back and they say they can get it for 19.5 and you can meet that and you're okay selling it at that, you can say, okay, I'm willing to do 19.5. When would you like to take delivery? If they say no, or I'm not sure to, would you buy at that price? Your response is, oh, okay. So do I have to be lower than that price, or is there something else besides price? So you're still trying to identify if price is the only factor, which it very rarely is. People tell you it is, but in reality, 7% of the time it's the factor. And by the way, if it is truly price, you may not want to make that sale. More on that a little later. But for now, if they say yes to lower price, you ask, how much lower? And then again, you have a choice to make, sell it for that price or not. If not, or if they say there's something else, you need more information. Best question to ask here, so what would cause you to buy today? Whatever they say, if you can meet those conditions, great. If you can't, you're either going to continue to deal with the price objection or do your best to resolve the other conditions. So again, when someone tells you they can get it cheaper, the first thing you've got to do is find out how much cheaper. That's why that was the first question you asked. If for some reason they didn't give you an answer to that or they took you off track, you've got to come back to that and get an answer to that question. Once you know the price difference, now you've got to find out what they're comparing it to. Is the comparison apples versus apples, so it's essentially the same thing? Or is it apples and oranges? In other words, there are potentially some significant differences. Once you know what you're being compared to, and in this case, let's assume it's pretty close, this is where you build value that's greater than the difference. So if there's a $1,000 difference, you want to build value that's greater than that. This is where knowing your product versus the competition's is very important. You've got to know how you, your product, your company, everything are better and why you're worth more than $1,000 more. So how are you as a salesperson? How's the actual product, your company, your service department, installation department, reputation in the industry, maybe your household name or the Cadillac in the industry, your guarantee if you have one. How does it compare to the competition? What are the other differentiators? How is all of that better and worth paying $1,000 more than what the competition has? All of that said, though, the most important piece is to know which of the above features is potentially most important to the prospect. Ultimately, the prospect determines the value of everything, right? That's why you ask that question, Joe, in addition to price, what else is important to you? If they say they're strictly buying on price, which almost no one is, but almost everyone will say they are just to bring your price down, make some suggestions. So, Joe, is it important to you that it lasts a certain amount of time or that it works right, does what it's supposed to do? If it's a life insurance policy, for example, you could say, Joe, of course price is important, but it's important that the policy actually pays out if something happens to you, right? So part of being a salesperson is asking the questions that elicit what the prospect should be focused on and what is important other than price. Let's face it, if someone saves a few bucks on a life insurance policy and then because of the savings, something got excluded so it doesn't pay out when they die and their family ends up on the street, was it really worth a few bucks they saved? Should they maybe been focused on something other than price? Yes. And as a salesperson, you need to be able to point out the potential downside of buying a lower priced item. You're the expert. Look, they may have studied and learned a bunch of stuff on the internet, but this is your business. You live it and breathe it every day. You've seen and experienced things they will never experience. You've been exposed to much, much more. You know the real potential pitfalls, and you need to paint a compelling picture in the prospect's brain where they see it's worth paying the difference because the alternative is unacceptable. So what risks does the prospect face if they buy the cheaper competitive product? And what questions can you ask and word pictures can you paint that drive that point home? By the way, if you need help with this, contact me. But that's sales. Being able to take their low cost, price only picture in their brain and change it so they're focused on what's really important, so that ultimately they get what they really need, a high quality product that pays off, works, whatever it is, versus what they think they need, low price. I mean, look, you can always be the lowest price, especially in service. You can price an insurance policy for $1. Of course, it won't pay, but it's the lowest price, right? These are the types of conversations you may have to have with prospects. Okay, look, all that said, here's some other ideas to address the price differences and perhaps make it a little more palatable. One thing you can do is to break down the difference in the price between you and your competitor to the lowest dollar amount. So let's say, for example, your price is $10,000, the competition's price is $9,000. Take that difference at $1,000 and then take the average life of your product, let's say it's 10 years, and come up with the annual number and the daily number. So the overall number is 1,000 divided by the 10 years is $100 per year. Take that 100 divided by 365, it's roughly 27 cents a day. Once you've done those calculations, give the prospect your 3 strongest benefits versus the competition and ask if the additional daily investment is worth it. Here's how this would sound. Joe, our product will get you protection of investment with the ability to upgrade any future features we come out with. You'll also get a machine that will last on average 33% longer than the competition's, which will keep more money in your pocket longer and save you additional money. Also, your uptime will be an average of 8% better than the competition's, making for a higher profit margin and making for happy customers and employees. Now, Joe, if we break down the price difference of the $1,000 between us and the competitor over the average life of an ATM or 10 years, that difference comes out to $100 a year or 27 cents a day. Joe, let me ask you, protection of your investment, 33% longer life, 8% better uptime, happier customers and employees, all of which will save money, time, effort, energy, headaches in the long term. Is all that worth an additional 27 cents a day? Okay, that's one way to handle the price difference. There's another technique you can use, but you need really well documented proof for this one, but here it is. Let's say your product has an average life of 10 years and the competition's product has an average life of 8 years. When you present the price for your product to the prospect, you're going to quote a per year price as opposed to the total price. Once you've done this, urge them to break down the competition's price based upon the average life of their product. Now, instead of presenting a proposal to the prospect, for example, $10,000, you present a proposal of $1,000 per year, put an asterisk at the end of the price, and then bring their attention to the asterisk, the note on the bottom of the page that reads, based upon an average life of 10 years. Next, present your proof to the prospect showing that the average life of your product is 10 years versus the competition's average 8 years. Now you're at $10,000 with an annual price of $1,000 per year. The competition's at $9,000, average price $1,125 per year. This is saying stats can be used either way to argue it. This is an example of that, however, it's very relevant and it's 100% true. Over the long term, they're absolutely paying less for your product and they're getting a better product. Now, I actually did this when I was selling ATMs in the banking industry because our machines on average lasted 17 years, the competition's 12. And we had service records and customer testimonials and all sorts of book information where we had all that backed up. But also, I had other advantages. So I could say, look, even without this, the other advantages show that our machine over the long term is much less costly to operate, delivers much more in the long term. So all that said though, if you have to reduce the price, one thing you can do is to remove some options. What extras, next level add-ons, additional service items have you quoted that you can remove? So do you have an extended warranty? Did you give them the platinum package versus the gold, silver, or bronze? Did you add special wheels, moonroof? You get the idea. Another thing you can do is stay at the same price, but give them something of additional value that doesn't cost you a lot, but will be valuable to them. For example, car dealerships throwing free tires for life, or free gas for a year, or 5 free oil changes. I know someone who sells chainsaws. They give away chainsaw oil and various other supplies. So finally, if you absolutely have to cut price, but only as a last resort. Look, in the marketplace, you're either the lowest priced option, the highest priced option, or you're somewhere in the middle. Low price sells low price. So if that's you, you're probably not listening to this or watching this video. If you're anything other than low price, you need to be able to articulate value, but you also need to be talking to people who appreciate value. Generally speaking, people who are always focused on price and trying to squeeze every dime out of a deal, they have the most trouble recognizing value. Look, everyone wants a deal. Almost everyone will ask for a better price, but there's a small segment of the population, again, it's only about 7%, that are very price focused. As someone who sold a higher price premier product, once I knew I was talking to one of these 7% people, I let them go. I'm telling you, it's not worth it. You don't want to deal with true price shoppers. They have zero loyalty. They'll fight you for a dime on every single deal. You'll never win them over. You can give them a better price on deals for 20 years, and as soon as someone's a buck cheaper, they'll forget about you. They're the most unreasonable, dissatisfied people you'll ever meet, who have no problem interrupting your Thanksgiving dinner to complain or ask you a question. Oh, and by the way, they're also the most likely to give you a bad review or sue you. Plus, you don't want referrals from them because guess what you're getting? The same type of people they are. On the other hand, people who recognize value and pay more. In almost all cases, they're an absolute pleasure to deal with. You still have to take care of them, but they're very loyal, very easy to work with. They'll even let you make a mistake here and there, as long as it's not an extreme mistake and it's not the norm. And many times they'll become friends of yours too. They also send referrals to you. And again, same people as them. Believe me, this is the way to go. So watch out when you're dealing with the two price shoppers. Okay, few extras here. Some good questions to ask in this process of lower price. Joe, you get what you pay for, right? Another one is, Joe, you know that products either have a higher cost up front and a lower cost long term, or a lower cost up front and higher cost long term, right? After they answer, well, in addition, we found that lower priced products also cost more time, effort, energy, headaches, and everything else over the long term too. So some of the keys here: know your position in the marketplace. Are you low price, high price, in the middle? Know your product and the competition's product well. Know your key differentiators and what makes you, your product, and your company better and worth more. And then develop good questions and paint good word pictures that get the prospect focused on what's truly important, and also make a compelling case for your product or your service. Again, if you need help with this, contact me. Also, this is important. Remember, who's the first sale to? Right, you. If you believe in your product, you believe it's superior to what the competition has, you'll have no problem asking more money for it and holding your price when people try to talk you down. You'll also sell more because people will hear the conviction in your voice and see that you believe in your product. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Do me a favor and hit subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next video.